There we go. Hi, my name is Brooke. I am the host of Fractal Mind Project and the creator of the Fractal Soul Network. I have here today my friends, Noam. Um, you say your own last name because you said it better than me.
I'm gonna say a different last name than I
cool.
told you.
Cool.
Beatone is my middle name and Zaharyan is my last name.
Cool. What about you, Rae?
My name is Rae Kretzer.
Amazing. Cool. We are here at a permaculture farm in Milledgeville, Georgia, and we are gathered here today making some breakfast around a fire. Some steel cut oats, some tea, beautiful stuff. Cool.
Oh, you're such a great leader. I see you. Okay, sorry.
No, you're great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, what is permaculture? Like, what about permaculture is interesting to both of y'all? You want to start, Rae?
Permaculture, I don't know a whole lot about. The first thing I think of with permaculture is the process with the chickens and of having more of a closed system and not having to import fertilizer or export waste. But being able to weed the garden, take your weeds, take your food scraps, give them to the chickens, let them process the material, and then you harvest their shit, their compost, and use it back in your garden. And that to me is like so profoundly simple and obvious and amazing. And I love chickens. And yeah, I think having a more closed, integrated, authentic system of growing food and being in your environment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like that you brought it back to being like individual and self-sustainable and like knowledgeable of everything, all the energy in the system and how it's being used. I think that's like really important conceptually. What about you?
The first image that just came to mind was seeing like this really big cornfield and that stretches for acres and acres, and feeling like Mama Earth is saying to herself, like, what the fuck are these humans doing on my chest? And when I think about permaculture, it's like a totally different relationship where it's saying, you know, what is a way that, like, how does the earth really want to be treated? And if we're consider ourselves stewards, whatever that means, or we think of ourselves as like the ones that have the ability to change the environment and make significant changes in the way things look, like where does that responsibility go, and how can it be manifested? And I feel like permaculture, as an idea, you know, one was not invented by old white men in the US, but was practiced by indigenous cultures all over the world, and all of our ancestors. That was just kind of like what when Rae said about the chickens, that it was just so obvious, like of course that's how it should be done. And I think very similarly, permaculture is just guidelines for how to go back to that. Oh, of course this is how we grow food. We grow trees and we have bushes, and we don't have to till the soil every year because our plants are all living as perennials, and we only have some annuals that just feel like things we really, really want to have, like tomatoes. And yeah, I think when I look at a permaculture food forest, I feel like this huge release of, oh wow, this looks right, this feels homey, this feels like home. And when I see those big cornfields driving in North Carolina or anywhere, I feel the opposite thing. It's like, wow, this is not what she wants. This is definitely not what she wants. So I guess in short, permaculture is like reconnecting to a sacred way of growing our sustenance and simultaneously creating a habitat for insects and for other animals to eat the excess fruit that we don't need and that we don't harvest, and
Right.
a way of like reconnecting to the abundance of the mother, and like taking that umbilical cord back, and putting it back into the earth.
In the Wild Unknown archetypes deck, like on the front of it, it says like accept all, reject none. And I think that's like a lot of how permaculture and like, yeah, really permaculture and understanding like the symbiosis of the actual ecosystem, like before we mess it up, I think like allows us to get a lot more information into how our bodies work and how we function as like part of this, because like we too are like a microcosm of the same system that's like going on out here. And I think like a lot of the things that we talk about, like meditation and like eating healthier, like it's basically just eating stuff from the earth. Like I feel like a lot of our obesity epidemic, like I had this thought that like I think that all the food that like your body can't process, you literally just store because it doesn't know what to do with it, and it doesn't know how to get rid of it. And I think that like it's just like I have on my website that like the toxins in our food and the culture really are like what Nietzsche means when he says like God is dead, like this like essence of like total energy that permeates through everything is just like being like taken out of the system, like it's not being acknowledged, like the way that we talk about energy like it's some hippy dippy concept when it's like actually present inside of everything. And I think like energy is just so important. Like this is energy. Like people don't understand that their power comes from like heat. Like this is happening somewhere, even if you're not the one doing it. And I think like being able to like harvest, like literally the wood was falling, the wood was already there, and then we just picked it up. We're not like cutting down, we're not even having to cut down trees. Like it's just what's already happening. It's just amazing how like in relationship it feels that we're like not taking more than there is, and like you can see what there is. It's just pretty amazing and inspires you to like work to your fullest extent, because like you're actually experiencing what it is you're working for. And I think that like our jobs that are meant to keep us on hamster wheels in a lot of ways don't allow us to like experience what it actually means to live.
Yeah, when you mentioned in the beginning that like what does it mean to eat healthier, it's just like eating the food from the earth. And as soon as you said that, I thought about, yeah, and even when we grow the food from the earth, we don't even know like how to prepare food anymore. We don't even know, like I just learned a year or two ago that some fruits you're supposed to eat totally by themselves because of the way that the nutrients are digested. I think like cantaloupe and honeydew are things that you're not supposed to mix with other fruits. Like I don't even know the most basic ways that my body wants to digest food. I didn't even know that steaming broccoli in water takes away all the nutrients, because the nutrients in broccoli are water soluble. And it's like, oh, so cooking broccoli, like steaming broccoli, is the opposite of what my body wants. And I never would have guessed that. Or that cooking tomatoes, some nutrients in tomatoes are only digestible in our body if they're combined with a fat like an olive oil or coconut oil or animal fat. And that if we're not eating let's say we're not eating tomatoes with one of those fats, we're not even going to digest the nutrients.
Right.
And I think, you know, it's amazing the level of disconnection that that we have, that even like growing healthier food is just like the first step. We've been so taken away from our bodies that like, I don't even think we're close to understanding how to actually take care of all of this, and how to actually make this body feel supported, especially food wise.
Yeah.
So, and when you said God is dead, and talking about culture and all the ways that we don't have essence and everything, I think I feel that very much as well. Like just all the things that people do, it just kind of feels void and feels lifeless. And then also hearing you make the comparison to global, that's something me and Rae have mentioned a bunch of times in each other's company these past few days, of just like holding ourselves not as these individuals that are outside of the world, which is a very Western idea, but more so that we are kind of very much a reflection of what's going on everywhere. And yeah, it makes sense that we feel that corruption in our bones and in our bloodstream because we're part of this whole system. So I appreciated that you mentioned that too, like just talking about how it all connects to this global, worldwide system. We're not these individuals that are separate from all of it. Like we're very much.
Yeah, everything is interconnected. Like one of the images, I keep referring to this, but I think this is good. Like one of the images that I have and that I'm kind of obsessed with, like in a lot of different ways, is the fact that like the cosmos look exactly the same as your neurons, like zoomed very, very in and very, very out. Like it looks the same, and I just think that's magic, and it's kind of like the code of like what we're trying to figure out is like this as above, so below. It's in everything and on a visible level, and that is like it's just codes to me. And I think in a lot of ways, like learning the ways of the earth is like getting the code to like hack the simulation, if you wanted to think about it that way, of like being able to create the reality that you actually want to see, and like not just being stuck in like your head of projections.
Yeah, it makes sense to me that so many people want to disassociate from reality, because reality as an individual human being is super intense and scary and like overwhelming in some ways. But I think reality, when you're feeling much more connected to place or to the people around you, but for me it's specifically place, makes me feel way less crazy and way less like what the fuck is going on in my head and what are all these voices and what are all these sensations. And I think I feel a lot more like calm and safe in my body when I'm around a place that I feel connected to, and where I feel less like this human body on earth and more of earth manifested through a human body. And that's what's really hard about community, because I'm very much impacted by the people I'm around.
Yeah.
And if the people I'm around aren't kind of like, maybe supporting isn't the right word, but encouraging me to have that deeper connection, it really gets to me.
Yeah.
And that's also why partnerships are very hard, because I find myself like constantly being in partnership with people that don't feed my essence, and then I kind of get stuck and I don't know what's going on, and I lose myself in their experience. So all the things.
It's really awesome that you're at least able to acknowledge it and then be able to grow from it. Like, making these realizations are just going to make every future relationship better, which is awesome.
Yeah.
How are you, Rae? What are you thinking about?
Something that's been on my mind, and thinking about permaculture and making, your own little community in the woods and all that, is, well, I hear criticisms from some leftists of that idea of like, you think the best thing for you to do is to go out and escape from society and make your own little permaculture world, but that's not realistic for everyone, or you're not helping to enact political movement that way, or you're just escaping and kind of maybe taking care of yourself and a few people and not really moving the world in a specific way. I don't know if that's messages that you've heard.
I have. Yeah, I understand that point of view.
And then also my dad, who is more of a establishment Democrat liberal, is kind of critical of my desire to do commune life or intentional community and that kind of thing, of that it is escapist and that it is impractical and that it never works and it always ends with drinking the Kool-Aid or some despotic leader, and it's not actually sustainable, and that it's kind of inauthentic, like it's a part of our privilege as privileged people with resources to escape and form other communities and leave your original community. And I feel my kind of gut, I don't know. I mean, it's hearing those messages from your dad is it's loaded with all kinds of other stuff. But that's just something that's been a little bit on my mind, and I was wondering if that was anything y'all.
Oh, I'd really love to respond.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's been placed on us is this binary of being the martyr that sacrifices everything for political change, protests every single day, gives up all of their stuff, and is just like die hard for changing the world and revolutionizing the world. And then this other opposite, which is like people kind of living out in the middle of the woods and doing nothing to affect any change and kind of just escaping. And I think that is manufactured.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's a way to paralyze those people that really do care, because it makes you feel like there's nothing you can do. All the options are terrible.
Mm-hmm.
That's my first thought when I hear you say that, is like I hear you kind of revoicing that binary of, and I hear your dad kind of voicing that too. Something else that came up for me is a really powerful reflection I had that helped me get out of my dark night of the soul that I was talking about earlier, and just like extreme depression, was saying to myself at some point, there's got to be a balance between saying, we should just give up on all the Afghani women that now have no rights in Afghanistan because of the Taliban, and saying, okay, what's my point in saying that? Maybe the earth doesn't want to be saved. Maybe the earth just wants to go through her process. Maybe she did all of this just to see if humans were capable of living a good life and being in harmony with the rest of her. And maybe all of these storms and climate change is her saying, like, I can't wait to get rid of y'all. I don't want you to fix this. I want you all dead as soon as possible, actually. And I don't necessarily believe that, but I think that takes a lot of this burden off of me, at least, because it makes me feel like, okay, if, let's say, the earth does get rid of all of us humans, that's not a bad thing. She's going to keep living her life.
Mm-hmm.
She'll be around way longer than any of us are around. So what's the way of like seeing that and still not giving up on political change? I don't now want to get silent about abortion rights. I still want abortion rights to be absolutely legal and a constitutional right for everyone in this country. So it's like, how do I accept that some things might not want to be changed and still feel like I want to change some things? For me, that manifests in saying, well, I have this one life. I'm just this one little human, and I have an opportunity to connect to this planet and reconnect to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, there's going to be people that are suffering all over the world, and my life might not be directly impacting them, and I might not be taking direct action to support the Afghani women that are being sold as cattle. But I will definitely have a nursery wherever I live, and I'll be giving plants to all of my neighbors for free. And I'll be hoping to create food forests wherever I go. And I'll definitely be having social outreach programs on my community land where underprivileged kids from inner city schools are able to come for as many days as they want for free. And I'll definitely be having a farmer's market that's 100% based on sliding scale, and the people that can afford to pay more for this fruit will pay more, and the people who can only afford to pay less will pay less. And I'm sure as hell going to go to the protests in my local cities, and I might even drive 2 hours every once in a while to go to a big protest. But I think this binary of if you go out there, you're isolating and you're abandoning the movement is total bullshit. And it's this huge cloud put over us to paralyze us from making any real change, because we just feel guilty all the time. It's just this perpetual state of feeling guilty. Like, how dare you use your privilege to buy land? It's like, and I want to have land on. I want to have a piece of land that I have that is direct specifically for homeless people and those that have been totally destroyed by our system, and kind of like give them the tools and opportunity to have their own land. And I want to have camps for all kinds of people, and I want to have, you know, specific part of the land that is a BIPOC community where people of color can have access to land that they maybe can't afford otherwise. And I think a big question for me is less so of like, how do I have the biggest political impact, and more so, how do I create so much abundance in my own life and in my community that it's easy to give?
Yeah.
And the giving will come. The giving will surely come. I will not isolate. I have no bone in my body that wants to run away from everything that's happening. But I don't think that the solution is to force ourselves to be right dead smack in the middle of this super fucking toxic culture, because God knows I'm not raising my kids out there, and I'm not sending them to public school. And if some person tells me that sending them to public school is the thing to do because otherwise they're being isolated, then I think that they're stupid, and I think that they're misled. So I kind of get frustrated hearing what your dad says, because I think it's paralyzing. I think it's feeding into this nonsense binary, and I think it's exactly what capitalism wants, is all these people that are super wanting to change the world, that want to live in community, that want to take back their life, and feel like they have this obligation to stay in the city because that's where the change is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wasn't just African Americans who lived in the city that marched in Selma and on all over. It was people who were living rural lives, and when the time came, they all came together and they protested, but they were also making these other changes. And it's not just that the small changes need to happen. You need to like, it's not this was a big thing I learned in the meditation retreat too, is you're not just meditating for the end goal. You're meditating just to meditate. I'm not going to build community just to save the world. I'm going to build community so I can live in this present moment feeling fulfilled and connected.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that out of that, bigger things will happen too. And just like us coming to Salamander Springs and leaving and it changing our whole lives, like, that is huge. Debbie's cause is not for nothing. Just because she wasn't in the city organizing protests and fighting against laws that were being passed doesn't mean that this life is meaningless. Doesn't mean that Salamander Springs is meaningless. Like, this is one of the most meaningful programs and places I've ever been, and it's changed more people's lives than any protest I know of. So that's the passion that comes up for me when I hear you say all that, because I deal with the same, you know, when I told you that I have that voice that sometimes comes in and tells me to go to school, it's the same voice that says you should be more politically motivated and like you should be protesting more, and instead you're just like this, you just want to be this like little hippie and like be a happy little boy like playing, you know, and I have to continuously tell that voice to go back in its corner and like chill out, because I know who's making that voice and I know how toxic it is.
Mm-hmm.
Does that resonate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We can choose how we manifest our community.
Yeah, I think my dad is someone who's really been hurt by
false hope.
Yeah, or he's on the same trip where he was telling me his feelings about that and what I want to do. He also said how he just retired from nursing, and said how he doesn't know, he's almost 70 years old and he still doesn't know what he wants to be when he grows up. And like and if he could do it all over again, still really wouldn't know what he would choose, and has never really felt super called to anything in that sort of way as a career or as a path. And yeah, I'm not really sure what to say beyond that, but
I think there's a lot of like pain that comes with disillusionment and like being told a false narrative your whole life and then like realizing that it was a lie. And I think like most people have an experience with that, like no matter what it's like, if it's like political or religious or like just a relationship with their parents, like in some way you feel betrayed because you thought something was going to save you, or like you were going to save something, and then feeling like, oh well, this is much bigger than me, And there's actually like you're like only so powerful as an individual, but like what we're trying to do is like connect the individuals. Like I was putting my whole heart, like I like genuinely felt if Bernie did not get elected, I was gonna be suicidal. Like because like why continue living in a world that is so toxic? Like that's like the best word, like so self-destructive, so like unconcerned with like what happens in the future. Like I'm very much what will my action, like my legacy is not who remembers me, it's how will my actions impact 7 generations from now. And like will we even have 7 generations from now of like human beings, and like how can my actions impact that? And like not just human beings but other animals, and like of stewardship, because I think that's like what we can offer the like world that gives us so much. And I think I was just really happy that you used that word. That's funny. This is the one I wanted, the one that says you're a grand person.
I'm listening.
No, yeah. I just think so the whole idea of fractal soul is for it to be a network or a collective, or like I basically want to raise money to build a bunch of land trusts so we can buy back the land and then make it public land and then turn it into permaculture food forests, and then allow people, like find people to like run that land and like basically steward that land, and you're responsible for this land, but like there is someone who oversees all this like interconnection, like there's like a board, you know, like this is a democratically run like institute, like it would be a new institution, but it would be one that's like meant to exist in harmony. And like I believe that that has the power to be global, and I believe that that has the power to overpower what is going on like in the state of the world. Like I think that like the true power comes to the individual level, and if we like have enough people in one place saying we're not going to take it anymore, then like who's to say like oh they're going to kill us and kill themselves, or we can make things better. And like what's the option? Like give me liberty or give me death, I suppose, and not to be a martyr because I don't want to be a martyr. Well, what can I actually do besides put myself in the front lines to get arrested at a protest? Like okay, like that feels good in the moment, and you get a good adrenaline rush, and you feel like you're doing something, and that's nice and gains. But like every day, what are you doing, and what can I do every day? And I can live this way every day, and it can feel good, and I can talk, and I can have conversations with people, because like I believe that true change comes at the heart. It comes like when your heart and mind are like feeding off the same energy. And I think like intentional conversations that change the way people think can like change the way people live. And I think that's all we really need to make the world like a better place. So we have to stop like being so like, I think we have such a need to be right, which like doesn't even exist. Like we'll like argue, but it doesn't matter. And that's what like Sarah's dad was talking to me the other day about how we like oh we've already gone too far, and like there's no point in saving anything, and like blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, I understand that you feel that way, but like I want to do what I can. Like I have 80 more years on this planet if like things go according to the way I want them to go. So like I would like to not be so hopeless.
May I add something to what you said?
Yeah,
I hear you saying so many beautiful things, and before I got more focused on like starting one place, my biggest dream was always to create a interconnected, like a network of intentional communities that were basically each other's support system, you know. So if one community lost their harvest of wheat, you know, there's still all these other harvests of wheat and sharing and et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, but something that came up for me was thinking, you know, I also want to make sure that we're never too focused on the impact, because if one day, if 2036 comes around and we find out that we got past the I mean, they're telling us now that we already got past the whatever it's called, that line where everything's gonna be fucked anyway. If we get there and we hear that there's no way of saving, do we just give up, and do we stop like holding our rituals? Do we stop growing our food? Do we cut down all of our trees because they won't be able to grow older? Do we end our pregnancies that are 8 months in because we don't want to raise a kid in a dying world? And I want the answer to be no to all of those. You know, I want to be able to raise a kid and they can be 8 years old and I find out that the world's ending and be like, hey, we got 8 years. Wasn't that beautiful? Like, fucking bless. I'm so glad I got to be with you for 8 years and show you this planet for 8 years, and I wonder if we focus too much just on the impact, then what would happen if, you know, Earth was like, hey, it's enough of you? Would we be crushed, and would we all become suicidal and depressed and like really dark in there? And so I think kind of wanting that impact, and also saying we're just doing it to do it. We're just growing food to have our hands in the soil. We're just like part of creation. That's enough. It's not, you know,
Just washing dishes to wash dishes.
just
Exactly,
washing
that's
dishes
what I
to
was
wash
thinking, yeah.
dishes.
Yeah.
You know, like, can we make sure that we stay balanced in that? And you know, I think that's the foundational question that Rae was asking in the beginning of like, am I running away if I go out in the woods and build community? And it's like, well, who will even put those words in your mouth? Like, yeah, not our whole life isn't just to relieve the suffering of everyone on the planet. And even if it was, I wouldn't know what the fuck to do, because they took all our power away. And like, what am I gonna go stand on the streets in Asheville every day and hold up a sign? And is that my best way to, you know, like, yeah. Ready. It's ready.
Cool.
What do you want to do?
I don't know. What do you mean?
I
I mean, I know what you mean.
Pause or...
Yeah, you will see what happens in the future.